Good afternoon. Your life is complex, and so is your personal response to stressful events. Stress is a physical response, and whenever the body perceives a risk, it instantly starts a chain of events that changes your body. For example, you may get headaches, you may perspire, your hands may get cold as well. And we know that when we're stressed, our hearts begin to beat faster and harder. Not only that, your mouth may get dry. Now, many of us have quick fixes that we use. For example, you may pop a hard candy or chew gum to relieve the dry mouth. Or you may start fanning if you feel that you're warm and you're perspiring. Also, you may just take an ibuprofen and lie down to relieve the headache. The thing about that is, what happens when we constantly ignore the signs of stress? Well, we're going to look at that. We're going to talk about that in just a few moments. Hi, friends. I'm Marcelyn Bailey, and you are inside of Stress Talk, the real talk, stress talk conversation for working women who are tired of being stressed out and close to burnout. Today, we're talking about what happens when we constantly ignore the signs of stress. We've been talking over the last few weeks about how stress changes the body and how that affects us in the long term. Well, today we're going to talk about why it's important to begin to recognize those signs of stress. And for you Cleveland Browns fans, I'm pretty sure you're stressed out today because the Cleveland Browns are playing Patrick Mahomes and the number one Kansas City Chiefs. I am a Browns fan, as I told you last week, and I was cheering my Brownies on when they beat the Pittsburgh Steelers. They were doing their thing. But today, it ain't gonna be because they're already losing. Patrick Mahomes and his Kansas City Chiefs are just doing their thing. Got to give them props for it. I certainly do. Well, let's talk about stress. Okay, so when we are dealing with stress, we know that not only is the stress response caused by being startled or frightened, it is also caused by our thoughts, our feelings, and our beliefs. Our brain can't distinguish between a real threat, like walking up or being startled by a raccoon that's going through the trash, or seeing a lion prowl through the streets, or from just our thought about it. You know, when you think about your car not starting in the morning, when it's cold, that creates a stress response. You're going to have a physical response to thinking your car's not going to start. Or if you take public transportation, the idea, just the belief that you're going to miss your bus or your train and you're going to be late to work or you're not going to get home on time, that can create a stress response. So we know that not only are real risk as well as perceived risk, they all cause the stress response to initiate. So what happens when we have the stress response, right? I've also talked about how the stress response can be caused by good things that happen. For example, let's say you've just been proposed to, that your companion of many years just gave you a ring and asked you to be their spouse, right? That's going to cause your heart to beat faster. It's going to pound because you're joyful, you're excited, you're happy. Or riding a um, a roller coaster will also cause your heart to pound, right? Because not only is it frightening, but it's also fun. It's exciting. And so it gets that adrenaline pumping. So it's the same when it's the same reaction, whether it's caused by happy or exciting or joyful events, or whether it's caused by sad, frightening, scary events. Okay. The stress response is the same. Also, what we've talked about is that just because you don't notice the stress reaction, your body's reactions, it doesn't mean that you're not stressed. It doesn't mean that the stress response is not happening, is not occurring. We have become so accustomed to not acknowledging when those changes in our bodies occur. For example, I talked about dry mouths. Have you ever stood in front of an audience and you had to talk? And maybe you weren't totally comfortable about doing that. And so, what did you do? You got up there, you might have felt a little shaky. Your mouth may have gotten dry, your throat got dry. So, but you kept going. You may have drank some water. That's why speakers have water close by. I, of course, have my tea because this is, it's the afternoon and I'm chilling. So, but they have something that they can drink so that they can keep their mouths hydrated and their throats hydrated. So, we compensate for that stress reaction. We compensate for that stress response so it doesn't stop us from doing the things that we know we need to do. So just because we ignore or we don't notice the stress response, or just because we have less stress or we feel less stress than we normally do, it doesn't mean that there is an absence of stress. So we want to keep those two things in mind. Less stress does not mean an absence of stress, and also that our thoughts, our feelings, and our beliefs trigger the stress response. Okay, so what happens when we experience the stress response or we're experiencing stress? There are different types, right? And one of those types is a chronic type of stress. And that chronic stress, I always call constant and ongoing. It means that it's steady. It doesn't change necessarily, but there's a pressure that we feel that we just can't get rid of. It's like holding a glass of water in your hand. And I'm going to demonstrate it with my cup. I can hold this cup, my mug of tea in my hand. And if I just keep holding it, right now I'm okay. And I can do that for a few minutes. But as I'm holding it, I'm starting to feel sensations in my arm, like right here. I'm starting to feel a sensation or a strain, like it's getting tired. And I'm not propping my elbow against my body to support my arm. I'm just holding it. Just holding this cup up, and it's almost full. It's almost full, so it's not empty. But the longer I hold this, the more pressure or the more strain I'm going to feel as a result of holding it. And eventually, my arm is going to get tired, and I'm going to feel, I'm going to need some support, right? I'm going to need some support to hold it, or I'm going to need to put it down before my arm fails and I drop it. The other sensation that I'm feeling some buzzing in my hands, like my fingers are getting tired too. And as you notice, it's kind of dropping and I'm lifting it back up. But if I were to continue to hold this, my entire arm would eventually fail. My muscles are going to fail because my arm gets tired. And I am starting to feel it in my biceps, the back of my arm above my elbow. Constant ongoing stress is just like that. It's like that because we continue to hold that stress, that and it gets heavy, but we can't drop it. We have to keep going. And over time, we get tired. Over time, we begin to fail. So, if we continue to ignore the signs of stress, that constant ongoing stress that I demonstrated using my cup of tea is going to cause us to become tired and overstressed. Okay? So that's one thing that can happen. We are going to experience, if we ignore the signs of stress that we personally experience, we're going to experience constant, ongoing stress, which eventually will cause us to become tired and overstressed. And it does lead to burnout. So let's talk about another type of stress that we're going to experience if we continue to ignore the signs. Another type of stress is one thing after another. And this is a type of stress that we experience when there's something that happens, right, one thing right after another. And I'll give you an example of this. Let's say that your car, okay, your car broke down, and because your car broke down, you had to take it to the shop, and the repair is going to cost over $1,000. Now, if you're fortunate, you have that in the bank. If you're like me and you're a working person, you don't necessarily have $1,000 just sitting in the bank waiting for your car to break down. So that's going to create a stressful situation where you're trying to figure out how you're going to pay for the repair on the car that you need. So that's one thing. Then you get home and you see water all over your floor, your kitchen floor, because the dishwasher failed. And that's going to cost you more money. And it's also a headache because you have to clean all of that up. So that's number two. It's one more thing. Then while you're home, you listen to your voice messages because you said, wow, I've got to call the repair person. So you picked up your phone, but you saw you had a voicemail messages. So you decided to listen to those. You listen to the voicemail messages and you hear a message that says your child was suspended from school for getting into a fight. That's another thing. So one thing after another is almost a rapid fire of stressful events that occur, and you don't have time to deal with and complete one thing before another stressful event occurs. with one thing after another, it is very hard to take care of one thing and get that done and finished before you have to go on to the next thing. It's almost like you have to keep doing, just keep up, keep up, keep up until you complete everything. One thing after another also leads to burnout if we do not address the stress that we're feeling as another stressful event occurs, because it builds up, right? It builds up. Also, with one thing after another, we begin to anticipate something bad happening. And because we anticipate something bad happening, we become hyper alert and hyper vigilant, which can also lead to anxiety. So, we've talked about constant ongoing things as well as stress, as well as one thing after another type of stress. Now, let's talk about the aggravating little things. Now, aggravating little things are just like sand gnats. And if you live in Southeast Georgia, where I live, sand gnats are probably the most aggravating things you can encounter, other than, let me think, love bugs. I'll talk about love bugs at another time. But sand gnats come out of the ground, and they usually appear in the spring and in the fall. And they come out of the ground when it's cool in the morning, and they fly around your head. It's like, oh, I mean, there's no way to even describe it. They swarm you. They just swarm all over your head and your body, and they bite. So you can have welts on your arm or wherever they've landed because they bite. And they're not really gnats at all, but they're called gnats. They're a type of fly. They're like a tiny fly, but they come out of the ground in the cool weather, the cool of the morning, and they just swarm you. They swarm you. And sometimes, like if you're out, we used to go to our daughter's soccer matches in the morning, and those gnats would just descend and would just cover us. And most of the parents would stand on those fields with their mouths covered, like up to here, cover. Yeah, we used a mask, okay? And it wasn't because of the virus, it was because of the gnats. So we had to use these masks and bring our hats down because those gnats were so awful, because they'd swarm, they get in your mouth, they get in your nose, they get in your ears, and sometimes they get in your eyes. They're horrible. Aggravating little things are like that. It's like you can't bat them away, because the more you try, the more they come at you. So what are aggravating little things? Okay, so I've given you examples of those before. Aggravating little things are: you wake up late in the morning and you're rushing because you don't want to be late for work. Aggravating little things are: you go in your closet to get something to wear, but you don't have anything pressed, so you have to press it while you're late. Then once you press your clothes and you're dressed, you're about to leave, but you spill coffee on your clothes, so you have to change and you have to start that process all over. Then once you start that process all over, you get in your car and you're driving, and you run a red light and you get stopped by the police and you get a ticket. So those are aggravating little things. It's like the sand gnats that you can't get rid of. It's the things that cause you to be aggravated throughout the day. Then when you finally get to work, that one person who gets on that last nerve decides they want to talk to you first thing. So those are aggravating little things. So how does this affect you? Well, it puts you in a very bad mood for the day, because you're aggravated that these things have happened. And if you don't address this type of stress, you will be aggravated throughout the day. And that can cause you to snap at your coworkers, snap at your family. It can cause you to be distracted so that you are not fully attentive to your work. It also causes you to make mistakes, which increases the aggravation. So, aggravating little things are, again, a type of stress that we want to manage and address so that it does not cause problems for us along the way. And then, last but not least, there's juggling. And juggling is when we have a combination of constant ongoing things, one thing after another, and aggravating little things. We're constantly juggling and trying to keep all of the balls in the air. But it's so difficult because we are at risk of dropping a ball. And I don't know if you recall on another live stream, I think it might have been for our Get Through the Holidays Without Losing It challenge. I talked about how juggling is so difficult because when you're juggling and juggling all of these stress related events, you're not just juggling balls. You may juggle you may have a few balls, but you also may have a bowling pin that you have to keep up with the ball. Or you may also have a knife or a machete that you're trying to keep in the air. So you're juggling different levels of stress. You're juggling different types of events that cause stress. And you're also juggling your response to all of that. And it makes it difficult. So it is important to recognize when you are juggling all of these different things so that you can make sure that you are taking the steps that you personally need to address them so that you don't drop a ball, so that you don't clunk your head with one of the bowling pins that you're trying to keep in the air, and so you don't cause serious harm to yourself with one of the knives or the machetes that you're juggling. And again, I'm using those things as metaphors for the types of events that cause stress and the types of stress, the levels of stress that you might be feeling. So, those are the reasons that you definitely want to address the different types of stress that you're facing right now. So, how can you do that? Well, I took a lot of this information from my Stress is Personal, Your Personal Guide to Stress, and Your Personal Starter Guide to Stress Relief. And this is a starter guide that I put together a number of years ago for working people to help them to develop strategies that they can use to manage the different types of stress that they have, as well as to recognize the hazards that may be caused if they don't manage their stress appropriately or if they don't deal with the stress levels that they have. I want you to have a copy of this, and I'm going to include it in a new download. I'm calling it my Stress Starter Kit Toolkit or something of that nature. And I'm definitely going to put that information in our Stress Talk private group, Facebook group, because I do want you to have a copy of this. I think it's helpful, and it's part of the toolkit that I'm putting together of free resources for you, just for you. Also, I want you to know that I've been working on my stress level as well, and I'm going to be sharing some of the things that I use to help manage my own personal stress. For example, I committed to doing 30 days of yoga with Adrienne. She has a 30-day yoga challenge for people, and it's a free challenge. And I don't get anything for sharing this with you, but I want to share this with you because it has helped me so much to bring down my stress level that I've just been chilling quite a bit. So I'm going to include that information in my toolkit. I'm also going to include information to connect you with 4-Star Fit Chick. She too is offering fitness, 30-minute fitness routines that you can do at home. You don't have to have any special equipment. You don't have to have any you don't have to have any special equipment to do it. A 30-minute workout that helps you to relieve stress. And I've been doing those workouts with her as well. That's Crystal Ellington, 4-Star Fit Chick. And I'm going to include that information in my download, my toolkit download just for you. Well, that's it for now. We've been talking about the hazards of ignoring the signs of stress. Again, I want you to be able to develop your own personal response to the stress that you experience. This is not a one size fit all thing. I want you to develop what works for you in your world in your way. I'm Marcelyn Bailey. I'm so glad you joined me today. And as always, take good care.